Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are doing something a little different. We are stepping into the war room, but not the kind with, maps and generals pushing little plastic tanks around. We're talking about the digital war room, the invisible battlefield that, in many ways, decided the future of the country.
Yeah, where the real fight is happening now.
Exactly. And to kick things off, I want to throw a number at you. 78%.
78%. It sounds like a passing grade in a hard class, but I have a feeling the context here is much more expensive.
Much, much more expensive. That is the percentage of their media budget that commercial advertisers, we're talking about the people selling you sneakers, car insurance, soda, the stuff you buy every day, that's what they allocate strictly to digital channels.
So more than 3/4 of every dollar.
78% of every dollar goes to the internet. Now, I want you to compare that to political campaigns. In the 2024 election, which was arguably the most high-stakes, high-spending election in history, what percentage of the budget do you think politics allocated to digital?
Well, knowing the data we have in front of us, it's shockingly low. It's 36%.
36%. Just let that sink in for a second.
It's less than half.
Less than half. You have companies selling toothpaste who are literally twice as sophisticated, twice as invested in the digital space as the people trying to sell us the leader of the free world. Why? I mean, are they allergic to the internet? Do they not know where the eyeballs are?
It really frames the conversation we're about to have perfectly, because today is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. We're looking back at the 2024 cycle with the benefit of hindsight. And we're looking at some fresh data from 2025. And the picture that emerges is what we're calling the strategy gap.
The strategy gap? That sounds ominous.
It was ominous for the losing side, for sure. We've got a massive stack of sources today to unpack this. We are primarily analyzing the Tech for Campaigns 2024 Digital Advertising Report, which is effectively an autopsy of the election strategy.
Okay.
But we're also pulling in spending forecasts from eMarketer, data from the Brennan Center, the Wesleyan Media Project, and some really, really interesting analysis on what's being called the industrialization of narrative control.
And the mission today isn't just to talk about who spent more money, because if you just look at the top line numbers, spoiler alert, the Democrats spent more money.
Oh, way more money by a significant margin, yeah.
But they lost the digital war. And we need to unpack why. It comes down to a fundamental difference in philosophy, right?
Exactly. It wasn't about the wallet. It was about the mindset.
Right.
We're going to see how Republicans treated political persuasion as an always-on game, basically acting like a modern media company or, a lifestyle brand.
Oh, right.
Whereas Democrats, broadly speaking, treated it like a seasonal sprint.
The boom and bust cycle.
Precisely. And if you're listening to this and wondering why your social media feed looks the way it does, or why you feel constantly bombarded by fundraising texts but rarely see a persuasive argument, or maybe vice versa, depending on your algorithm, this is the deep dive that explains the mechanics behind that entire experience.
Okay, let's unpack this strategy gap, starting with that massive discrepancy. Because when I read that 36% number for political digital spending versus 78% for commercial brands, my first thought was, this feels negligent. I mean, the gap is huge. Why hasn't politics caught up?
It's the multi-billion-dollar question. And what's even more concerning, if you look at the trend line, is that the gap is actually widening.
Wait, it's getting worse.
It's getting worse. In 2020, the difference between commercial and political digital allocation was 36 percentage points. In 2024, it grew to a 42-point gap.
Wow.
So while the rest of the world, retail, auto, entertainment, is sprinting toward digital dominance, politics is actually drifting further behind relative to the market.
That feels completely counterintuitive. We hear about digital elections all the time. We hear about the influence of algorithms, TikTok bans, Russian bots. The whole narrative is that digital is everything.
Right, that's the story we're told.
But the money tells a completely different story.
The money tells us that political campaigns are still addicted to television, broadcast TV. And to understand why, you have to look at the incentives. This isn't just about habit. It's about the business model of politics. This is the consultant industrial complex at work.
Consultant industrial complex. Okay, that sounds like a conspiracy theory you'd read on some dark web forum. Break that down for me. What is the actual mechanic there?
It's economics, plain and simple. Follow the money. Media consultants in politics are typically paid a commission a percentage of the dollars they place on media buys. Historically, this is around, say, 10% to 15%.
Okay.
Now, put yourself in the shoes of a consultant. You have $10 million of donor money to spend.
Okay, I've got $10 million. What do I do with it?
Option A. You place a massive buy on broadcast TV. It takes a few phone calls, maybe a couple of emails to secure the airtime. It covers a huge chunk of the population, say the entire Philadelphia metro area, and you collect your fee. It's wholesale buying, efficient for you, the seller.
Low effort, high reward. I like it so far.
Option B. You take that same $10 million and you try to spend it on digital. Now you are dealing with thousands, maybe tens of thousands of fragmented channels.
Oh, man.
You have to optimize creative for TikTok, for YouTube Shorts, connected TV, Instagram Reels, maybe even audio ads on Spotify. You have to tweak audiences constantly because digital burns out faster. You've got to navigate complex data privacy laws state by state.
It's a nightmare. It sounds like a million times more work.
It is infinitely more work for the exact same commission.
So it's institutional laziness. Or is it just, bad incentives?
It's institutional inertia caused by bad incentives. The report from Tech for Campaigns explicitly calls this out. They mention that this incentive structure prevents modernization, particularly within the democratic ecosystem. It's just easier and more profitable on an effort-to-reward basis to buy big chunks of TV than to do the hard, granular work of digital.
That makes perfect sense in a really cynical way. But commercial brands don't do that. Nike doesn't just buy a Super Bowl ad and call it a year. They are in your feed every single day. They have entire teams dedicated to this.
And that's where the boom and bust problem comes in. Commercial logic says consumer decisions happen 365 days a year.
Right.
You might decide to switch toothpaste brands in March or November. You might decide to buy a car on a Tuesday afternoon. So the brand maintains a constant presence. They're always there. They want to be top of mind whenever you make that decision.
Right. Always on.
Political logic, however, has traditionally been voters are dormant. They are asleep for 3 years. Then, 9 months before Election Day, we wake them up with a fire hose of ads.
Which feels so archaic because the news cycle is now always on. We are doom scrolling 24/7. Our opinions are being shaped constantly.
Constantly. People's beliefs are being shaped on a Tuesday in February of an off year, just as much as they are in October of an election year. Probably more so, honestly, because their guard is down.
That's a great point.
If you aren't defining the narrative continuously, someone else is. And this is where we see the massive divergence between the parties. This is the heart of the strategy gap.
Let's get right into that divergence, because the data on the off-year spending, what happened between 2020 and 2024, and what's happening right now, even in early 2025, is honestly startling.
It's the clearest evidence of the whole thing. The Tech for Campaigns report analyzed the spending cadence of these big advocacy groups. They looked at the off years, so 2021, 2022, 2023. These are the years when, quote unquote, nothing is happening in presidential politics.
The quiet years.
The quiet years. They found that leading right-wing groups, specifically those aligned with the Trump movement, decreased their spending on Meta, Facebook, and Instagram by only 3%. Compared to election year.
Wait, hold on, only 3%. So they were spending almost campaign-level money when there was no campaign.
Essentially, yes. They were flat. They just kept the machine running. They kept the lights on, the content flowing. They treated it like a subscription service, not a one-time purchase.
Wow. Okay, so what did the other side do?
Now, look at the left-wing organizations. In those same off years, they slashed spending by 75%. 75%. It's not even in the same ballpark.
That is a massive difference. So the right is whispering or, shouting in your ear every single day for 4 years. The left shows up 2 months before the final exam and tries to cram.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And we see it continuing. We have data from the first quarter of 2025. The election is over. Trump won. The inauguration has happened. But right-wing groups were still outspending their left-wing counterparts by 3.5 times in Q1 2025.
They aren't stopping. The game is never over.
They view persuasion as brand building. It's about building trust, shifting the Overton window, what's acceptable to talk about, and maintaining a relationship with the audience.
Right.
The left, according to this analysis, treats digital as a transactional tool. It's a button to push. We need money now. So they push the fundraising button. Go vote now. So they push the turnout button. When the transaction isn't needed, they disappear.
It reminds me of that friend who only calls you when they need to borrow a truck to move.
Yes.
Versus the friend who checks in on you every week just to see how you're doing.
Yeah.
You trust the check-in friend. You start to ignore the truck friend.
And that trust translates directly into what we call an owned audience. Mm-hmm. This is a crucial concept that the political class, especially on the Democratic side, often misunderstands.
Okay, owned audience. Break that down.
So if you have to pay Facebook or Google Every single time you want to talk to a voter, you are renting that audience. You're paying rent for their attention.
Got it.
If that voter follows you, subscribes to your YouTube channel, signs up for your newsletter, and shares your content voluntarily, you own that audience. You can reach them for free anytime you want.
And the right is winning the ownership game.
By a landslide.
Right.
I mean, it's not even close. Let's look at the media ecosystem. You have groups like PragerU and the Daily Wire. These are massive right-wing media companies. They aren't just campaign accounts. They are full-blown content hubs.
Right. They produce shows, documentaries.
Everything. The report shows they have double the Instagram followers and 1.5 times the YouTube subscribers of the top left-wing equivalents like Courier Newsroom or Now This Impact.
And that's just the main brand accounts, right? That's not even the whole picture.
Not even close.
Yeah.
If you include the network effect, so the featured speakers, the podcasters, all the personalities associated with the Daily Wire, for example, the right's advantage jumps to 8 times on Instagram and 6 times on YouTube.
8 times the reach. That's exponential. That means one side is screaming into a megaphone and the other side is whispering in a closet.
It means that in an off year, when ad budgets are tight, the right doesn't need to spend millions on ads. They can just post a video, and millions of people see it organically. They have built a self-sustaining ecosystem.
So they have lower customer acquisition costs, to use a business term.
Infinitely lower. The Democrats are essentially starting from scratch every 2 years, having to buy their way back into people's feeds, reintroducing themselves to voters who haven't heard from them in 18 months.
It seems like one side is building a media empire and the other side is still just running a political campaign. And in 2026, media empires win.
It raises a really provocative question about the future of politics, doesn't it? Are we moving away from campaigns entirely? Maybe the future is just rival media ecosystems that monetize ideology 24/7 and, occasionally there's a vote.
That is a terrifying and fascinating thought. But I want to pivot back to the 2024 elections specifically, because despite everything we just said about the right's always-on advantage and their own media, the Democrats actually spent more money overall in the final stretch, right?
They did. Significantly more. The Harris campaign and their allied groups had a 3-to-1 spending advantage on Google and Meta overall.
3-to-1.
3-to-1. Harris reserved about $200 million for digital and connected TV. Trump's campaign spent significantly less. I mean, the numbers are stark. About $6 million on Meta versus Harris's $55 million in the final run-up.
Okay, so if you just looked at the receipt, you'd think Harris dominated digital, but she lost. So where did the money go? If you spent 3 times as much as your opponent and lose, you didn't just have bad luck, you had a bad plan.
This is where we have to distinguish between persuasion and mobilization. And this is the absolute core of the tech for campaigns analysis.
Okay, define those for us quickly, because I think people use them interchangeably, but they are very, very different mechanics.
They are. So persuasion is trying to convince an undecided voter or maybe a soft supporter of the other side to vote for you. It's the ad that says, here is why my policies are better, or here is why the other guy is dangerous. It is an argument.
Trying to change a mind.
Trying to change a mind. Mobilization is talking to people who already agree with you but might stay home on Election Day. It's the ad that says, get off the couch, here's your polling place, click this link to make a plan to vote. It is an instruction.
Got it. Convincing versus activating?
Exactly. Now, despite spending less raw money, Trump allocated his budget with what you can only call surgical precision. Trump's campaign allocated 31% of his Meta budget specifically to mobilization.
41%. Okay, what about Harris?
Only 13%.
13, 1-3.
1-3. 13%.
Wow. That is a huge discrepancy. One campaign is almost half mobilization, the other is barely a tenth.
It gets even more extreme when you look at the outside groups. Elon Musk's America PAC. We all heard about it. It was all over the news. But the data shows exactly what they were doing. They directed 83% of their Meta spend to mobilization.
83%. They weren't even trying to change minds. They were just trying to move bodies to the polls.
Precisely. They identified their people and they hammered them with one message: vote. They used Meta, Facebook, and Instagram as a get-out-the-vote machine. And analytically, that makes perfect sense.
Why is that?
Meta is great for immediate action. You see an ad, you click a button, you find your polling place, you RSVP to a volunteer event. It's a direct response platform.
Whereas Harris was using it for persuasion.
Overwhelmingly for persuasion and broad awareness. which arguably is better suited for platforms like connected TV or YouTube platforms where people are watching longer-form content and are in a more passive, leaning back mode.
So a mismatch of message and medium.
A total mismatch. The Trump strategy matched the platform to the goal. Meta for action. TV for persuasion. The Harris strategy seemed to treat everything as a persuasion channel, a billboard.
It feels like the Democrats were playing a 2012 game, trying to win the air war and win the argument on TV, while the Republicans were playing a mechanics game, just grinding out the votes with a sophisticated ground game, but a digital one.
And we can't ignore the unpaid media variable in all this. We talked about how much money Harris spent on ads. Well, Trump didn't have to spend as much on persuasion ads.
Because he was on the news all the time.
He dominated the earned media cycle, the fire hose, as they call it.
Right.
The data is incredible. Between July and October of 2024, Trump received 62% of all news media mentions. Harris got 38%.
So he got almost double the free airtime.
Exactly. When you are sucking up all the oxygen in the room with controversies, rallies, sound bites, you don't need to pay for a 30-second spot to tell people who you are. Everyone already knows who you are. Your name ID is 100%.
He effectively bypassed the ad tax by being Trump.
And by utilizing that owned audience we talked about earlier. When you have the entire right-wing podcast ecosystem and media world amplifying your message for free, 247, your paid budget can focus entirely on the mechanics. Go vote.
Meanwhile, Harris had to use her paid budget to do two jobs: define herself to voters and get out the vote. It split her resources.
It completely split her focus and her budget.
So we have the always-on advantage, and we have the mobilization versus persuasion gap. But I wanted to talk about the screens we are watching this on, because the report highlights something it calls the TV screen fallacy. And this connects to the massive growth in CTV-connected TV.
This is one of the most important technical shifts in the last 4 years. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. CTV ad spending in politics rose 506% from 2020 to 2024.
Wow, 506%.
It reached $1.56 billion. It captured virtually all the growth in political digital spending.
That makes sense on the surface. Everyone is streaming. Cable is dying. My parents don't even have cable anymore. So the politicians followed the eyeballs. What's the problem?
They followed the eyeballs, but they brought their old baggage with them. The report calls it the TV screen fallacy. Political campaigns are treating Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube on your TV just like they treat NBC or CBS.
Meaning they're just running the same ads.
The exact same ads. They take the polished 30-second TV spot, the one with the flag waving and the candidate walking in slow motion with their family, and they just slap it onto a streaming service.
Why is that a problem? I mean, a screen is a screen, right? If I'm watching Hulu on my 60-inch TV, isn't that basically the same experience as watching NBC on my 60-inch TV?
Not really. Think about the user experience, how you actually watch. On YouTube, even on a TV, you often have a skip ad button after 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, I'm a professional at hitting that button.
We all are. You have a different attention span.
Yeah.
And crucially, you are almost always holding a second screen, your phone.
That's so true. The second a commercial comes on while I'm streaming, I'm instantly on Twitter or Instagram or checking my email.
Exactly. Commercial brands understand this. If you see a Coca-Cola ad on the Super Bowl, it's cinematic. It's a story. It's an event.
Yeah.
If you see a Coca-Cola ad on a YouTube short or in a streaming ad break, it's fast, it's punchy, maybe it's shot vertically on a phone. It's designed to grab you in 3 seconds. It's native to the platform.
But the political ads look the same everywhere.
The Tech for Campaigns researchers reviewed hundreds and hundreds of ads. They found that both parties, to be fair, frequently ran the exact same creative across CTV, YouTube, and traditional broadcast.
That just sounds lazy.
It's the lazy creative problem. And it has a massive price tag. The report estimates that nearly half 49 cents of every dollar donated to presidential campaigns went to these TV-style ads, regardless of where they actually ran.
Wait, say that again? So if I donate $100 to a candidate, $49 of that went to running a generic TV ad on a platform where it might not even work.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
It's a massive, massive inefficiency. And again, it goes right back to that consultant incentive we talked about at the beginning.
Of course.
Making one ad is cheaper and easier than making 5 different platform-specific ads. But the performance suffers dramatically. Ads that feel out of place get skipped. Or worse, they feel inauthentic.
Inauthentic. That's the death knell in politics today, especially online.
Especially on digital. If you're scrolling through TikTok or Instagram Reels and you see a highly produced, glossy TV commercial, your brain instantly categorizes it as fake, corporate, propaganda. You tune it out.
Whereas a shaky vertical video of a candidate talking directly to a camera in their kitchen, that feels real. It fits in.
Exactly. It feels native to the platform. And the data bears this out in the down ballot section of the report. This is where digital, when it's used correctly, actually wins and wins big.
Right. Let's shift away from the president for a second. Let's talk about state legislatures, school boards, city council, local races, because the economics there are totally different.
They are. And it's where this whole conversation becomes even more stark. If you are running for state senate, buying broadcast TV is incredibly wasteful. You have to buy the DMA, the designated market area.
And that's usually based on a big city, right?
Right. So let's say you're running in a suburban district in New Jersey, but your DMA is the entire Philadelphia media market.
So you're paying to show your ad to millions of people in Pennsylvania who can't vote for you.
Exactly. It's pure waste. For a typical state legislative race, the report says 70 to 85% of a broadcast TV buy reaches people who literally cannot vote for the candidate. It is lighting money on fire.
But digital fixes that problem.
Digital completely fixes it. It allows for fine-grained geographic targeting. You can literally draw a line on a map around the district and say, only show my ads here.
Yeah.
The report found that when you account for that waste factor, paying for eyeballs that can't vote digital is 14 to 65 times more cost-effective than broadcast TV for local candidates.
65 times more effective? That's not a gap. That's a canyon. It feels like malpractice for a local campaign to be on TV at all.
And yet, many local campaigns still try to get on TV because it feels legitimate. It strokes the candidate's ego. Hey, Mom, I'm on TV. I'm a real candidate. But the smart money and the tech for campaigns data shows this is moving to digital.
And it's not just about standard digital ads, right? There's more to it.
Right. We need to talk about relational organizing and influencers.
This was the stat about influencer impact that really stood out to me, because usually when people hear influencer, they think of, the Kardashians selling a makeup line, but that's not what this is.
No, this is all about micro-influencers.
Yeah.
They found that ads using local influencer content, so trusted local voices, maybe a community leader, a well-known pastor, or just a relatable mom in the district who has a following, those ads saw a 42% higher engagement rate than standard ad creative.
42% higher just by having a real trusted person instead of a polished voiceover and stock footage.
It speaks to the trust deficit. People trust people. They don't trust campaigns. No. And there was a great note on AI in the report, too. Everyone thought 2024 was going to be the AI election.
The year of the deep fake. Everyone was panicked about it.
There was some of that, for sure. But the report's takeaway on the creative side was much simpler. AI can't save a bad concept.
Huh. I love that.
They found that good ideas, good messages, performed well whether they were AI-generated or human-made. But a weak concept. You can use the fanciest AI in the world to generate the video, and it still flops. Technology doesn't replace a good message.
So we've covered the strategy, the creative, the platforms, but we have to talk about the dark side of all this. The money we can't fully see.
The dark money. And 2024 set a new record. $1.9 billion in dark money. That's spending by groups that do not disclose their donors.
Nearly $2 billion. That is a staggering amount of anonymous cash flooding the system.
And a huge chunk of it is going online. The report tracked about $281 million of that spent on online ads alone by groups that don't disclose donors. And here is the transparency black hole.
Go on.
Meta and Google have ad libraries. They're imperfect, they're clunky, but you can go look at them.
I can search, who paid for this ad on Facebook? I've done it before.
You can. But platforms like X, formerly Twitter and Snapchat, far, far less transparency. And the biggest gap of all, influencer payments. If a dark money group pays a podcast or an Instagram influencer $50,000 to talk about an issue,
that doesn't show up in any ad library.
It shows up nowhere. It just looks like content.
So the $281 million is probably the floor, not the ceiling.
It is absolutely the floor. It's almost certainly much, much higher. And politically, there has been a major shift here. Historically, Democrats campaigned against dark money. They called it the corruption of our democracy.
Overturn Citizens United, right? That's been a core slogan for more than a decade.
Right. But the data shows that Democrats have. Well, they've embraced it. In the 2024 cycle, the Democratic dark money ecosystem actually outspent the Republicans. In 2020, to give you a baseline, top Democratic groups spent $1.5 billion in undisclosed cash versus $900 million by Republicans.
That is the definition of the activist's dilemma. You hate the weapon, but you feel like you can't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Exactly. They want to ban it, but they feel they need it to win. And this flood of outside money from both sides is what drives so much of the negativity we see.
That was the other finding, right? The breakdown of who goes negative. Because my impression is just that I see negative ads from everyone all the time.
It's a classic good cop, bad cop routine. The report analyzed the content of the ads. Candidates, the actual people running for office, they spent the majority, 57% of their online money promoting themselves. Hey, positive ads. I'm a good person. I have a great plan. Vote for me.
Keeping their hands clean, playing the role of the unifier.
Exactly. But the outside groups, the super PACs and the dark money groups, they spent nearly 2/3, 65%, on ads with negative elements or contrast. They are the attack dogs. They do the dirty work so the candidate doesn't have to.
And was there a partisan split in the style of attack?
There was, and it's fascinating. Pro-democratic spenders were more likely to use contrast ads, so comparing candidate A to candidate B on an issue. Pro-Republican spenders, on the other hand, were more likely to use pure promotion of their own candidate.
Which aligns perfectly with the mobilization strategy we talked about earlier.
It all connects. If your goal is mobilization, you want to hype up your guy. You run ads saying, join the movement. Trump is great. It's promotion. If your goal is persuasion or, critically, fundraising, which the Democrats were heavily focused on, you use contrast. Look how bad the other guy is. Give us $10 to stop him.
It all comes full circle. The strategy dictates the content, which dictates the platform, which ultimately dictates the result.
And when one side is playing an always-on mobilization game and the other side is playing a seasonal persuasion and fundraising game, well, we saw the result in November.
So let's bring it all home. We've unpacked a lot here. The strategy gap is real. It's 36% LSF, 78%. It's mobilization versus persuasion. It's renting an audience versus owning one.
And it's a structural failure to adapt. The commercial world figured this out a decade ago. You have to be digital first, you have to be always on, and you have to tailor your creative to the platform. Political campaigns are burning billions of dollars of donor money on outdated TV strategies because the consultant payment model incentivizes it.
If I'm a listener, and maybe I'm a Democratic listener, I'm probably feeling pretty frustrated hearing this. I'm thinking, I donated my hard-earned money, and you're telling me it was wasted on a TV ad shown in the wrong state.
It's a completely valid frustration. And if you are a donor, you should be asking these hard questions. What is your digital retention strategy for the off year? Are we building an owned audience or just renting one? Why are we spending 80% on TV when the voters we need to reach are on TikTok and YouTube? You need to demand modernization.
And if I'm a Republican listener, what's my takeaway?
You're probably seeing the fruits of a long-term investment. The conservative movement started investing in alternative media ecosystems, talk radio, then Fox News, then podcasts, now social media companies. Decades ago, they didn't trust the mainstream media, so they built their own.
Right.
And in 2024, that investment paid off in the form of a massive mobilization machine that didn't rely on traditional ad spends to reach its audience.
It brings us back to that final provocative thought you mentioned at the start. We keep calling these campaigns, but is that word even accurate anymore?
I really don't think it is. I mean, a campaign implies a start and an end. It implies a temporary effort for a specific election. But what we are seeing with the Daily Wire, with these influencer networks, with the always-on data, is the industrialization of narrative control. It's a 24/7, 365 operation.
We aren't moving from election to election. We are living inside a permanent state of information warfare.
Exactly. In the future, we might not have campaign managers in the traditional sense. We'll have audience growth leads and community managers and content strategists running the show for 4 years straight. We are moving from winning elections to monetizing ideologies. And the candidate is just the content creator in chief.
Wow. The candidate as content creator, that is going to stick with me. It completely changes how you look at every tweet, every rally, every video. It's not just a message, it's a piece of content in a much larger strategy.
It's the new reality. And the side that accepts that reality first and builds the infrastructure to support it is the side that wins.
Well, on that slightly dystopian but incredibly insightful note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive. Whether you are mobilizing, persuading, or just doom scrolling. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. See you next time.